Good morning, good afternoon. What's going on there, folks? It is the Earthmaster here, back at it on this Wednesday, March 29th, 2023. It is about 12:33 p.m. here along the west coast in the state of California. Latest earthquake shows a 1.5. Looks like just off the coast there of Morocco. Also some activity ramping up into the California area. Also notice this pretty good stacked amount of earthquakes up there in Wyoming. Well, let's go ahead and check out the state of Wyoming and see what's going on up there. I think a lot of folks do know what's up there, and that is indeed the Yellowstone supervolcano we're seeing up here. Underneath Yellowstone Lake, we have an earthquake swarm going on. It's been a little while since we've seen an earthquake swarm centered right around the Yellowstone Lake area. This is the location that's seen the I think it was 2008, 2009, somewhere around there. That pretty intense earthquake swarm that lasted for a couple months. Not uncommon to see earthquake swarms here at Yellowstone, but this one just kind of fired up out of the blue, and it's a good one. It's definitely a dandy. I think I can use that word, right? Largest magnitude so far, a 3.7 in the mix there of about 73 earthquakes. That was looks like there's a 3.1 and a couple other 2s as well in there. The latest quake shows a 2.3 coming into the region right now. Most of these earthquakes around the 2 to 3 kilometer range. Now, a lot of times in the summertime, spring and summertime, we'll see swarms kick up, some swelling and whatnot, GPS uplift due to the water, kind of like the snow melt there, soaking into the ground. Recharging the system, maybe running into some heat and some thermal conditions below that will create some swarms on occasion, but I don't think it's springtime up there yet. I think they have a lot of snow and everything's still frozen. But this earthquake activity right at the northern end here of Yellowstone Lake, and again it's centered right around the area of 2008, 2009 swarming area. Now, I want to see here, there we go, now it's working. I was having an issue with the site. This is the overview of Yellowstone National Park that shows all the earthquake activity. This looks crazy, right? Look at this. All these earthquakes showing up all over the place, except for the ones that are improperly tuned. Look at this station over here, Lake Butte. And by the way, the epicenter of this swarm is over here around Lake Butte area. Take a look at this, if it's going to let me. Take a look at this station right here, and you tell me what's wrong with it. Having an earthquake swarm right underneath this seismograph station, and there's not a bleep or anything at all on here. I think if we were to have a giant asteroid hit this location, then we might see a little blip here on the graph, but goodness, come on, guys. I don't know who's managing that station there, Lake Butte, but it's not properly tuned. Also, stations up here, Soda Butte, Mammoth Vault, Old Faithful, Little West Thumb. You can tell the correct stations that are properly tuned out here, and some that definitely obviously need some adjustment, and those are the ones not showing anything. So the closest station out here appears to be the Lake Yellowstone area, and I'm not for sure why it's not on this map. So I pulled up a seismograph station right here. This is the other site that you can use to monitor earthquake activity. It's the quake.utah.education site, the University of Utah. Once again, here we are at Yellowstone, specifically right here in this area of Lake Yellowstone. There's no seismographs, but the closest one is going to be Lake Yellowstone right here. So the seismograph station kind of shows us what's going on, and there's quite a bit. What the USGS mentioned, about 71 earthquakes being reported there. Let me click back on that. I'm trying to see. I think we got more than 71 earthquakes popping up here. But let's see. It looks like this came up here about 8 hours or so ago. It's still continuing. Seeing quite a few smaller quakes as we speak. And I do have, by the way, a live seismograph station there keyed up at Lake Yellowstone, and that is exactly where the swarming location is. So it's going to be picking up even some of the smaller earthquakes that are coming into the Lake Yellowstone area. So a number of earthquakes, and they're showing up all over the place, folks. Hard to say if these are any bigger than what's being reported. I don't believe it is, but there's quite a bit. I want to go over here and check out the largest magnitude, which was a 3.7. That's going to show up pretty much anywhere in the park. And that struck at 14:24 UTC time. So I just want to go back over here, check out the 14:24 UTC time, somewhere around here. We can check, for example, Maple Creek. 14:24. Here's a 1400 UTC time. 1500, going to be somewhere in the middle, right? But prior to the middle mark. Possibly thinking right here is that 4-pointer. And here was another stronger quake following that there. It looks like around the 1430 time frame, 1427 time frame or so. Let me see what we got. Let's go back and check here from that 3.7 right here. Would have to be really close. It's not a 1.8. Definitely not a 1.8. So I'm looking at these seismographs and their readings and how they compare to one another here on the graph. Obviously, there's that 3.7, but it looks as though shortly thereafter, very close to 1430, we had another identical mid to upper 3 right here. But I'm not seeing it listed up here on the USGS map. They kind of skipped over it. There's the first one at 0724, and then the next one should be right about here at that time frame, but they have it as a 1.8. You guys see that? It doesn't look like a 1. That might be the 1.8, but right here, that's another larger quake, another 3.7. It looks like they're in the mix. So there's a few earthquakes here not being reported, or they're skipping over, or they're possibly doing a little evaluation on determining the correct depth, or maybe there's just so many of them they're going to wait and catch up on it at a later date, which they have been known to do. But either way, a pretty large earthquake swarm and many earthquakes not showing up on the USGS map. There's that 3.7. There's that I think that 1.8, and here's that secondary 3.5 or 3.7 there. That's going to show up all across the park. And it did. So either way, goodness, pretty active. It's been a while since we've seen an earthquake swarm of this size. We did see a little bit of activity up here around the northwest corner of the park. I think it was last month, maybe some smaller earthquakes, but nothing comparable to what we're seeing up here right now. So we'll continue to watch this and report on it. Again, some earthquakes are missing off of this graph here. They'll probably get to it. It's probably a little bit closer to 100 earthquakes if you want to include all the ones that they missed there at Yellowstone National Park. The GPS stations are trying to find one that's up to date, that's current. It's hard to find it, even on this map right here. This is the Nevada GPS network map. Many different government agencies and whatnot utilize this GPS system. And right around Lake Yellowstone area, that graph's not working. This graph here is. Look at that. That's when we had that swarm back in about 2008, 2009. There was a very sharp vertical uplift here at Yellowstone National Park, specifically in this area. And that kind of went down, and then it kind of went up a little bit there in 2015. And now it's back down. But we don't know for sure because it only goes to, I don't even think we see 2023 on here. These are intervals, it looks like, of 12 years. So it's hard to say if the, if the, this is current or not. I don't believe it is. It doesn't look like it includes 2023 in here. This one only goes to about 2021, maybe if that. So a lot of these are not working properly like they should. I even checked out the Yellowstone, the official page here, where you can check out the tilt meters, temperature and whatnot, but none of this is working. It's like this is all supposed to be public information, but it's there. I mean, look, they'll believe it. As long as you put a couple symbols up here on the map, then everything's okay. But when you go to click on this one's working, obviously, but even so, it's not really picking up any of the earthquake activity. But when it comes to the temperature, the tilt meter, none of these are working. There's GPS positions here as well. This only goes to about, this is very similar to the other one. There's 2022. This looks like about 3-year intervals here, right? It does say 2023 on here. See that? 329. So this date to 3/29/2023. 3-year intervals. 2022. It's possible this could be it. If you really think about it, we could be into the 2023 time frame here. So this isn't really showing anything far as vertical uplift goes. That would be, obviously inflation of the volcano. There is a little bit of northward trend here with the GPS position. Not so much in the east, kind of dipping a little bit. So I'll check back on that. I'm kind of curious to see. I'd like to get my hands on some of this tilt meter data and see what's going on up there at Yellowstone, because it just kind of popped up out of the blue. All right, so we'll continue to watch that and, of course, report back on it. Latest there shows a 2.0 at 12:08. Let's get the time here real quick. Let me back out of here. So 12:08. Get this right. There we go. 12:08. All right. Well, that would be somewhere back over here, wouldn't it? Way back here, right? It's not even at 12:08 yet. Look at all these other ones popping up. So I'm telling you, there's a lot more earthquake activity at Yellowstone than what's being reported. The last one reported 12:08, and obviously, as we can see here on the graph, there's been many more here in the last 20 or 30 minutes that has not been reported. 12:08 goes back over here, which doesn't cover it. So many more earthquakes popping up there at Yellowstone. Okay, so good swarm. See what else we got going on here, folks, across the area. Some further activity across the San Francisco Bay region. Did see a little bit of swarming kicking up there on the San Andreas Fault yesterday. Doesn't look like anything's popped back up today. Maybe we did have a 1.2 in that little area. But this region did see a little bit of swarming kicking up here over the past couple days. 13 earthquakes, supposedly. That's what they're reporting here. And the largest was a 3.4 there, just outside of Pacifica. Again, just on the San Andreas Fault here, the peninsula section. This is the segment of the 1906 rupture. And let's see what else we got. We got Nevada popping up here as well. There's some old lava tubes, old lava features up here. I remember visiting this area a few years back when there was a good swarm going on. There was a couple hundred earthquakes a day going on. So I took the trip up there to see what was happening, and I learned that there's a lot of old volcanic features up here, and obviously some old lava domes and whatnot, or lava tubes down below the surface. These are one is deep, 13 kilometers. The rest are relatively shallow there at the surface levels or just below there, because this elevation here is I don't know what it is, probably 4,000 or 5,000 feet. So a little bit of movement stretching inland into the North American plate. There's that further activity across the bay today. A little bit of movement this morning near Dublin area, 2.2. That is on the looks like the Calaveras Fault zone. A little bit of activity on the Hayward Fault as well. Long Valley supervolcano, fairly quiet. We did notice a little bit of uptick here on the Imperial Fault. This is another, well, it's just really close to the San Andreas Fault. This is a southern segment here. A little swarming off of the Brawley seismic zone, the southern end of the Brawley seismic zone, northern end of the Imperial Fault. coming in. It looks like just after midnight in a pretty good swarm fashion. No main quake, a bunch of 2s and some 1s. But again, still got to watch for migration up here. There's a triggering zone, which is probably a couple miles within the San Andreas Fault that Lucy Jones and some other seismologists, geologists, and scientist folks believe that could trigger the big one up here if we get close enough swarm. Right now, that's not the case. One little earthquake here off the San Andreas Fault, looks like, a 1.6. And the San Jacinto Fault Zone showing a little bit of activity as well up there on the map today. Texas, that's well inland, near the Pecos, Texas area, showing, there we go, showing a little bit of activity kicking off here in the oil fields, the oil pumping operations, wastewater disposal wells as well, quite a few 1s and 2s, some yesterday, some from today. Oklahoma, not a whole lot going on. One earthquake in the New Madrid seismic zone of 1.8 just after 3 in the morning. Southeastern Missouri, that is in the New Madrid seismic zone, right smack dab in that area. Eastern portion of the country fairly quiet. Let's see what else we got here. The Puerto Rico area up here around the Puerto Rico Trench. A couple 3s kicking off here, and most of the activity though in the swarming area. South America, not a whole lot popping off there. Let's look at the Earthquake 3D globe. We're missing a few earthquakes here on the USGS map in the Middle America Trench. Looks like some 4s, 3s, and 2s kicking off here in this area of Costa Rica, El Salvador area. Nothing showing up here on the map from the USGS. Not for sure why, but there is some earthquake activity taking place there. Quite the uptick down here in Tonga, Kermadec Trench area in New Zealand. See what we got. That activity is showing up. Looks like the latest quake is a 5.4 into the Tonga region, relatively shallow. Did see quite a bit of deep scale movement here down into the trench levels. That's obviously adding some strain and stress upstream. That deep earthquake there. It's raining again. Got some more rain coming in. I just heard it falling on the roof. 5.0, 617 kilometers deep here. Goodness. That's into the, looks like the Kermadec Trench area. So we'll watch this area further for some movement with all this deep activity upstream. We got to watch that. New Zealand area, not showing nothing here on the USGS map. We do have a 3.8, it looks like. Coming down pretty good. Let's see what the GeoNet servers are reporting. GeoNet, double check that real quick. 3.6, there it is. Just north of Wellington area, North Island. The drums is a good indicator of what's going on out here. If it's hard to read on the map, sometimes these drums are, it kind of pinpoints what's going on out here. And there's not a whole lot, looks like, at least in New Zealand currently. But again, with all the deep movement up north, adjustment right here in the Kermadec Trench, definitely keep an eye on this plate boundary south. Lacking activity here across the Papua New Guinea and the Solomon Islands area today, although this area did see some movement kick up here. Yesterday and the day before, we did see that 6.1 coming in, a couple other quakes throughout the area. So that I'm not really too concerned about this area today, more so with upstream movement and adjustment back behind the subduction area. Looks like a deep quake up here into the Izu Trench. You can almost tell that whenever there's a earthquake situated here well off the plate boundary left of this subduction zone, it's going to be deep. 502 kilometers deep for 4.7. So adjustment should be taking place here soon upstream of that deeper activity. Not really seeing it yet here on the map, but we will. A slight adjustment around the southern end of the Java Trench. The let's see, we've got a couple 4s over here. USGS reporting one earthquake, 4.9, 12 kilometers deep, just outside the Java sea area, but there is a little bit of noticeable uptick here in movement across the area. Eastern Afghanistan looks to be fairly active from yesterday. One more earthquake after midnight, pretty deep, 213 kilometers for that 4.3. And let's see what else we got. Very quiet across the Myanmar area south into the northern Sumatra area. Turkey region still showing quite a few 4s and 3s. Atlantic Ocean all quiet for now. What do we got? Another 1.5 coming in here to Yellowstone, it looks like. I'm going to, with that swarming kicking up here, I'm going to add a couple hours onto the scale here. Because a lot of times, for whatever reason, when there's a big earthquake swarm going on, it takes off the number of earthquakes on the globe in a relative 24-hour period. So that's a little bit more feasible as far as covering the last 24 hours there at Yellowstone. So let's see what we got here. Yeah, they're reporting some of that smaller earthquake activity I was just mentioning about here on the Yellowstone graph. Look at that. When you kind of squash this down, you can see some smaller quakes in there as well. Those are all still little microquakes. Some of these other ones will pop up here and squash or flatline the data. It looks like these haven't been set up here yet. The latest one shows 12:25. So they're behind a little bit. Looks like maybe 20 minutes behind. Might take them a little time to review the data, pinpoint the exact location and the depth according to the the seismograph reading. So, hey, but at least it looks like they're on it today. I've seen swarms in the past and they don't even pop up here. But most of the time that's during the weekend when I guess nobody's there to review the data. Either way, we'll keep an eye on a couple certain areas today. Obviously, Yellowstone, the West Coast showing elevated movement. And quite a bit of deep activity here across the Fiji, Tonga, and the Kermadec Trench regions. The Hawaii area, not a whole lot popping off. 2.0 in the last hour or so, half hour. They're pretty quick with that one. But no major activity to note there across the Big Island and up into the Alaska area. Well, typical day up there, it looks like. No unusual activity. A little bit of backbuilding here prior to the subduction zone. A couple, looks like a 2.5 and a 3.5. I'm sure that's a little stressed here in this area. All right, let's see what else we got here. Yeah, we'll definitely continue to check Yellowstone. Space weather activity. We did have our 7th X-flare. Our seventh X-flare of the year. Now, that's pretty impressive, right? If you really think about it, last year at this time, last year in total, I should say, I think we only had, let me see here. I think we only had about 7 X-flares total last year. Only 7. And we're only into March, and we've already had 7, so definitely could be a very active year for X flares. There is that X 1.2 from 3256. Here's the top flares of solar cycle 25 so far. Of course, last month in February we had the X 2.2, and then last year we did have an X 2.2 back in April 4/20, 2022. So it's ramping up here, folks. 7 X flares so far this year. I think it's going to be pretty active. That X flare, when it popped, was kind of on the southwestern quadrant of the sun. I don't believe it shot off any ejective material. It was positioned kind of over here, away. Well, it's still within Earth view, but not directly squared up with Earth, and it is off the Earth-Sun plane. Off the sun, I should say. There we go. The Earth-Sun plane with this position right here was not perfectly lined up with any, say if there was a CME blasted off, it probably shouldn't be geo-effective. Looks like they've raised the X-flare potential a little bit to 5%, M-flare at 15%, C-flare at 95% chance. We did pick up a couple C-flares and even an M-flare here overnight, so things are kind of ramping up still around that regional sunspot, 256. This is about the only one I've been chatting about here over the past couple days. It's been showing a little bit of complex structure. It does pose a little bit further threat. Notice the intermingling of the different colors there, indicating some complex structure. What's behind that? Nothing really of noteworthy activity. I'm not really seeing anything that looks as complex as this. So that will remain our flare threat for now until that exits on the western edge of the sun. You can kind of see these polarities here, these magnetic structures, very awesomely defined. But again, that's about the only sunspot area. What's around the bend here is not a whole lot. Got a prominence, it looks like, right here. Sometimes those blast off. Kind of see it better right here, but looks fairly stable for now. All right, let's see. Nothing according to the 3-day geomagnetic forecast. As far as auroras go, things are fairly minimal up at the higher latitudes. Not really expecting too much there. Quick glance at the weather activity today from the Storm Prediction Center. Looks as though, well, there's no severe weather threat, not anything major going on. There definitely is on day 3. Now, I've noticed, remember day 2 for Thursday? This showed a pretty good threat for severe weather. Well, that has since changed. And that's good news for the folks there of Oklahoma and Kansas area. But, and tornado potential is fairly minimal, about 2% chance. But that activity has shifted to day 3, but much further east and much further on a broader scale here, with a little bit higher chance of severe weather, covering a large population, 17 million people, I should say, in that area. So we'll continue to watch that as we head into day 3. Didn't mean to go back too much here. Wanted to check the West Coast activity. Western U.S., there's our current storm system, bringing in some snow and rain as we speak. Spinning off the coast here, churning in some moisture off the Pacific coast. And that's going to scoot on down south. After that, we've got a couple more cold systems coming into the Pacific Northwest, just barely clipping Northern California, but keeping things fairly unsettled. This is going to bring in a lot of colder air down here onto the next Monday time frame. And what's behind that? Well, looks as though it stays somewhat active, but the systems are kind of off into the Pacific there. They're not really as intense or as active. And this, like I say, this type of weather for April, for end of May, or end of March, excuse me. Like I say, I think we were in the 80s this time last year. Had a nice suntan and the pool set up already. So it's been quite the extended, lengthy winter for us here along the West Coast. And again, I'm not going to complain. I definitely enjoy it. All right, folks, just stay safe out there. And this site right here, it's called isthisthingon.org. /Yellowstone/Datums.php is a really cool site that shows the overlay of all the seismograph stations here at Yellowstone. So if you want to check it out, this is definitely the site to check out. And there's some of those earthquakes. I'm waiting to see when they're going to put this one on. There's that 3.7. This one still looks fairly big. That's not a 1.8. So I'm sure they'll get to it, right? Alrighty, folks, I'm going to jump off here and enjoy the rain that's going on here. And again, Yellowstone seismograph stations is keyed up there at Lake Yellowstone. And we'll check back on this a little bit later tonight, see how it does. See if it's going to continue. We'll catch you guys a little bit later on. Have a good one, everyone. Enjoy your day and stay dry.